In the center is Chris Petrone. Chris Petrone teaches Marxist critical theory at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and the Institute for Clinical Social Work, and is the original lead organizer and chief pedagogue of the Platypus Affiliated Society and the original organizer of the Campaign for a Socialist Party. And finally, directly to my side is Ingar Zolti. Ingar Zolti is Senior Research Fellow at the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung in Berlin and author of numerous books, including Trump's Triumph, Post-Liberal Capitalism, and the edition Marxismen, a 36-volume book series of introductions to key Marxist thinkers from Marx to Anwar Shaikh.
Democratic Socialists of America. And you have, various sort of popular movements that kind of eclipse, emerge, and then are kind of integrated back into the Democratic Party. I think that the need to kind of draw those three forces together and undertake a genuine reevaluation and regroupment effort of those forces is the necessary path to an American party. However, I think that this is going to have to be in dialogue and in a dialectical relationship with the re-emergence of revolutionary Marxism in the entire hemisphere. A point of my talk that I feel has not been taken up much is that I do think that the Third American Revolution is a hemispheric revolution. It is not just within the borders of these United States. Right. It is a hemispheric revolution. And that means that, between the United States and Brazil, you have essentially the entire linchpin of the continent. It just runs through that.
Sure.
And and Trotsky himself said this when discussing the dynamics of the American Revolution. It is as much as in Chicago, as in CDMX, and in Rio, that the fate of this American Revolution will be decided. And I think that American Marxists need to take their internationalist duty far more seriously than they currently do. Yeah. I think the American left has been very derelict in this internationalist duty. And the sort of negative reflection of this has been a kind of third worldist, like, that actually the American working class has no obligation because we're all fucked, and so we just have to go and hold signs or whatever. No, American workers, the American socialists have an obligation, and they have the resources to fight. Che Guevara said, he envies those who live within the belly of the beast, because that is where the world revolution will run through. And I think that remains true today. I think that the task of the American socialists is to actually build something that their comrades in Latin America
can take inspiration
from, and vice versa.
Yes.
Because otherwise, the American exceptionalism that has plagued the American left, where the American left looks only to itself for its own destiny, will condemn it forever. I think that is the task that our American comrades face. Once again, I can't tell you what to do, but I think you should probably take it into consideration.
Gramscianism, right? That I think that Sanders was basically, right? We invoke the working class from above and hope that it will, then organize itself from below. I mean, it did work with Walmart, and I appreciate the strikes that you had in the biggest, employers like Walmart and Amazon here. Very important. But obviously, there's limits to that strategy too. But I think in the future we will make many errors. But as Mao said, the truth is in practice, right? That's the measure, and we will have to make mistakes in order to learn how to do things better.
I kind of have something to respond to.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, I have a few things to respond to there, because I've followed you so far, and I disagree with quite a few things you said. I think this question of the indigenization of socialism, I think that the 20th century shows us the exact limits of an American road, or an Italian road, or a Chinese road to socialism. The crisis in the Middle East today is in many ways the failure of the national road to socialism.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The crisis in the Mashrek is a failure of the national road to socialism. The failure of the Latin American left is absolutely the failure of the national road to socialism. The idea that socialism can be realized in Cuba or Colombia or Mexico alone, rather than as a continental revolution, is exactly the failure of the national road to socialism.
It's not necessarily the same, though, I would say.
I do think that is the direction this leads to.
and thinking about, is socialism a precondition for freedom, or is freedom a precondition for socialism? Well, today, of course, we need freedom to produce a socialist party. And so the freedom that exists in the United States, freedom of speech, freedom of association, that does not exist in Europe, where religious organizations are controlled by the state, where the state funds some religious institutions, but not others. So the state's not going to fund a cult. In the United States, they don't fund any of it, so that means you can have cults, right? You don't have the state deciding what a true religion is. That's huge for building a socialist movement, because a socialist movement is going to be called a cult by the capitalists, right? No, seriously. And, because I think that it is still the case, there's freedom in the United States that there isn't in any other country. And it's the freedom to produce a socialist movement and a socialist party that doesn't exist elsewhere. You're not going to start a new socialist party in China, but also you're not going to start a new socialist party in Germany. The freedom to do it is here.
Then why don't you have one?
I'm trying. I'm trying. So we are having an experiment in democracy right now, meaning the people elected this guy. Does he know what he's doing? Has he been vetted properly? Does he read the intelligence briefings? Does that matter? In other words, is he just supposed to? So we're in the midst of this war with Iran right now. We meaning all of us living in this historical moment, because I don't refer to U.S. policy in terms of we, not at all. Soleimani, so you could say this tete-a-tete with Trump and Iran goes back to the assassination of Soleimani. Literally what happened, the national security agencies developed a menu of options, and they did so in a way to try to coerce him into taking one action rather than another action. So they put the killing of Soleimani on there as like the crazy option that of course he would never take. And he said he knew that they had put it on the menu as the option he's not supposed to take, and that's why he took it. Now, of course, we can be appalled and horrified by that, but the alternative to that is unelected rule. And that's the real Bonapartism. That's the real Bonapartism. As Marx pointed out, it wasn't Louis Bonaparte, actually, because he was not like Napoleon. It was the state. It was the state that he represented. And he himself was a kind of mediocrity and incapable of playing a world historic role, but the state that he represented was the necessary instrument to maintain capitalism. And we're testing the limits of that, meaning, is this a liberal democracy or is it a bureaucratic dictatorship? It's a bureaucratic dictatorship, but with the illusion of democracy, including the illusion that the president can make the decisions. That can't be left out of the equation. It can't be left out of the equation. Meaning, of course, Trump was never meant to be president because he doesn't know enough to know that you're supposed to listen to the bureaucrats.